She didn't believe in love until she met a single dad. Savannah Kellerman thought driving 18 hours across the country was enough to outrun a broken past. She thought a small town in Tennessee was a sanctuary where secrets couldn't find her. She was wrong. When you build walls to keep the pain out, you also keep the healing out. But when a desperate father and a little girl with a shattered heart crashed into her life, Savannah had to make a choice. Keep running from the man who destroyed her trust, or stand her ground and fight for the family she never knew she needed. This isn't just a love story, it's a battle for survival. But before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Savannah Kellerman had a rule: never trust a man who says, "I promise." It was a rule written in the ink of betrayal and sealed with 3 years of heartache. By the time she turned 32, she had collected enough broken promises to fill a landfill. Her fiancé, Wesley, had sworn eternal devotion. He had been charming, intense, and utterly convincing. Then, exactly 48 hours before their wedding, he left a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I can't do this. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." She hated him. Not just for leaving, but for the years of subtle control that preceded the departure. The way he checked her odometer, the way he isolated her from her friends, the way he made her feel like her world had to revolve around his moods. Leaving was his final act of cruelty, but in hindsight, it was her liberation. So when Savannah packed up her tiny apartment in Oregon and drove 18 hours to accept a veterinary technician position in Ashford Creek, Tennessee, she wasn't looking for love. She wasn't looking for redemption. She was looking for anonymity. She wanted a place where the coffee was strong, the rent was cheap, and the gossip moved slower than her grandmother's internet connection. She found a town where people waved at strangers from their porches like it was 1952, and where the diner served pie that could make a grown man weep. It was safe, or so she thought. She started her job at Whispering Pines Animal Clinic on a Monday in early October. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and wet fur, a scent Savannah found strangely comforting. By Tuesday, she had treated 3 beagles, 1 ornery goat, and a parrot that shouted marital advice. By Friday, she had settled into a comfortable rhythm of work and solitude. She liked the quiet. She liked that no one knew her history. But the quiet was shattered at 4:47 p.m. The bell above the heavy oak door didn't just chime, it was practically ripped off the wall. The door banged open, bringing with it a violent gust of autumn wind and rain. A man stood there, framed by the storm, soaked to the bone. His chest was heaving as if he had run miles. He held a cardboard box in his arms, shielding it with his body as if it contained the crown jewels. Beside him, clinging to his wet denim jeans, was a little girl with bright auburn pigtails and a face streaked with tears and rain. "Help!" he gasped. His voice was deep, rough with panic. "Please, we found her on the road. I think she's hurt bad." Savannah didn't ask questions. The rule follower in her vanished instantly, replaced by the medical professional. She moved out from behind the reception desk. "Bring her to exam room 2, now." The exam room was cold and smelled of rubbing alcohol. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a stark white glow on the scene. The man placed the soggy box on the steel examination table with hands that were shaking. Inside lay an orange tabby cat, matted with mud and blood, breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. "Duchess is gone for the day," Savannah said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline spiking in her veins. She pulled on blue latex gloves with a snap. "It's just me." The little girl let out a sob that sounded like it came from the bottom of her soul. "Is Duchess gonna die?" The man looked at Savannah. His eyes were dark, intense, and filled with a terrifying amount of trust for a stranger. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the linoleum floor. "Can you save her?" Savannah looked at the cat's leg. It was a nasty laceration, likely a car swipe. The animal was in shock, gums pale, body temperature dropping. Then she looked at the man. She saw the desperation etched into his features. He wasn't just asking about a cat. He was a father trying to keep his daughter's heart from breaking. He looked like a man who had seen too much loss already and couldn't bear to witness another ounce of it. "I'm going to try," Savannah said firmly, "but I need you to be brave for me, both of you." For the next 20 minutes, the room was a blur of focused chaos. Savannah cleaned the wound, stitched the laceration, and administered warm fluids. The man, whose hands were large and calloused, working hands, Savannah noted, held the cat gently. He murmured soft words that seemed to calm both the animal and his daughter. "You're okay, Duchess. You're okay. We've got you." Savannah worked with precision, her mind blocking out everything except the task at hand. When she finally tied the last suture and checked the cat's vitals, she felt the tension in the room begin to dissipate. The cat's breathing deepened. The gums began to pink up. Savannah exhaled, wiping sweat from her forehead with her wrist. "She's stable. She lost some blood, but she's a fighter. She's going to make it." The little girl let out a breath that sounded like a deflating balloon. She stepped forward, ignoring the wet mud on her clothes, and wrapped her small arms around Savannah's leg. Savannah froze. She wasn't used to being touched. She wasn't used to gratitude. She stood there stiff and awkward as the little girl squeezed tight. "Thank you," the girl whispered into Savannah's scrubs. The man looked up. The panic had drained from his face, leaving behind a handsome, rugged exhaustion. He ran a hand through his wet hair. "I'm Colton, and this is Junie. You just saved our world, ma'am." Savannah hesitated, then shook his hand. It was warm, solid, grounding. "I'm Savannah, and you don't need to call me ma'am." An hour later, the storm outside had settled into a steady drizzle. Duchess was resting comfortably in a recovery cage, wrapped in a warm towel. Colton and Junie sat in the waiting area while Savannah typed up the discharge notes and medication schedule. "We owe you," Colton said, approaching the desk. He was holding 2 cups of coffee he'd seemingly conjured from thin air, or the cafe next door. He placed one on the desk near her hand. "Black, 2 sugars, I guessed." "Good guess," Savannah said, taking a sip. It was hot, strong, and exactly what she needed to stop her hands from trembling. The adrenaline crash was hitting her. "Junie doesn't handle loss well," Colton said quietly, leaning against the counter. He glanced at his daughter, who was sitting near the door, drawing on a piece of scrap paper. His voice dropped an octave, becoming rougher. "Her mom, my wife, Nora, she passed 2 years ago. It was a sudden brain aneurysm. One minute she was hanging laundry in the backyard, humming a song, and the next—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The silence that hung between them was heavy with unsaid words. Savannah felt a sharp pang in her chest. She looked at the single dad, the exhaustion under his eyes, the way he constantly checked on his daughter to make sure she was still there. She saw the weight he was carrying. It was the weight of being the entire world for someone else. "I'm so sorry, Colton," she said softly. "We manage," he said, offering a small, sad smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "But when we found that cat, Junie decided she wasn't going to let anything else leave her life without a fight. She insisted we bring her here immediately." "She's a tough kid," Savannah observed. "She gets that from her mother." They shared a moment, a quiet understanding between 2 people who had seen the darker side of life. Savannah felt a strange warmth she hadn't felt in years. But then her gaze drifted past Colton, out the front window of the clinic. Her blood ran cold. Across the street, parked under the flickering glow of a street lamp, was a black sedan. It was idling, the exhaust puffing white smoke into the cold air. The windows were tinted dark, but the silhouette was unmistakable. It looked exactly like the car Wesley drove. The same make, the same model. Even the slight dent in the bumper looked familiar.
No, Savannah thought, her grip tightening on the coffee cup until her knuckles turned white. That's impossible. You are 18 hours away. He doesn't know where you are. You were careful. Savannah? Colton asked, noticing her stare. You okay? She snapped her head back to him, forcing a smile that felt brittle and fake. Yeah, just tired. Long day. She looked back at the window. The car was gone. Had it even been there? Or was her trauma playing tricks on her again? Her therapist had warned her about this. Hypervigilance, the feeling that the danger is always right behind you. We should get going, Colton said, standing up. Come on, Junie, let's let the doctor close up. Can we come back tomorrow? Junie asked, holding up her drawing. It was a picture of a cat with a bandage and a stick figure woman with a stethoscope. I think Duchess would like that, Savannah said softly, trying to push the image of the black car out of her mind. As they left, the bell chimed cheerfully, but as Savannah locked the heavy deadbolt behind them, she didn't feel cheerful. She felt exposed. She walked to the window and pulled the blinds down tight, her heart hammering against her ribs.
2 weeks passed. Duchess made a full recovery, and in the process, Colton and Junie became fixtures in Savannah's life. It started with medical checkups for the cat. Then it became thank you coffee deliveries. Then it became Colton fixing a loose hinge on the clinic door because he happened to have his tools in the truck. Savannah tried to keep her distance. She told herself it was just professionalism. She told herself she couldn't afford to get attached. But Colton Rowe was persistent in the most gentle way possible. He didn't push. He just existed in her space, offering a kind of stability she hadn't known she was craving. And then, somehow, Savannah found herself standing in the middle of a pumpkin patch on a Saturday afternoon. The air was crisp and smelled of dry leaves and cinnamon. Families were everywhere, laughter floating on the breeze. It was the kind of wholesome scene Savannah used to mock. But today, looking at Junie running through the rows of orange gourds, she couldn't find the cynicism. "This one looks like a butt," Junie announced loudly, pointing at a deformed gourd with 2 distinct lobes. "Juniper Row," Colton gasped, scandalous delight in his voice. "We do not call pumpkins butts." "But it does," Junie insisted. Savannah laughed. It was a rusty sound, something she hadn't used in 3 years. Not since the day she found the note on her kitchen counter. Not since her life imploded. She realized, with a start, that her face muscles actually hurt from smiling. "Earth to Savannah," Colton waved a hand in front of her face. "Junie wants to know if you think this pumpkin is structurally sound enough to be a jack-o'-lantern." Savannah blinked, coming back to the present. She looked at Colton. He was wearing a red flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. He was looking at her with a warmth that made her stomach flip. "It's perfect," she said. For a moment, she forgot to be afraid. She forgot about the black sedan she had seen 2 more times near her apartment complex. She forgot about the feeling of eyes watching her in the shadows. "You have a nice laugh," Colton said softly. "You should use it more." "I'm working on it," she replied, looking down at her boots, suddenly shy. "Savannah," he stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "I know I'm just the guy with the cat and the loud kid, but I'm glad you're here, in Ashford Creek. I'm glad we met." Savannah's breath hitched. She wanted to lean in. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to tell him that he was the first good thing to happen to her in a very long time. But the universe had other plans. Bzz, bzz. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, shattering the moment like glass. The sound was jarring against the peaceful backdrop of the farm. She pulled it out. The screen lit up with 2 words, unknown caller. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Her stomach dropped. She shouldn't answer. She knew she shouldn't. But the curiosity, the dread, the need to know, it was overwhelming. "Hello?" Savannah answered, her voice trembling slightly. Silence. For 5 seconds there was only static. Then heavy, rhythmic breathing. It was the sound of someone savoring the fear on the other end of the line. "Who is this?" Savannah demanded, stepping away from Colton, turning her back to him to hide her face. "You look pretty in that jacket, Savannah," a voice whispered. The world stopped spinning. The voice was smooth, cultured, and terrifyingly familiar. It was the voice that used to tell her he loved her right before he criticized her outfit. "But you shouldn't be laughing," the voice continued, dripping with malice. "You know you don't deserve to be happy without me." The blood drained from Savannah's face. She felt dizzy, as if the ground were tilting beneath her feet. "Wesley?" Savannah whispered, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. "I'm close, Savannah. I promised I'd always take care of you. I'm coming to take care of you. You can't hide from me. You never could." Click. The line went dead. Savannah stood frozen in the middle of the pumpkin patch, surrounded by laughing families and the smell of apple cider. She felt like she was drowning. He was here. He was watching her right now. He had seen her laughing with Colton. Colton was at her side in a second. He touched her arm and she jumped a foot in the air, letting out a small yelp. Hey, it's me," he said, his face filled with immediate concern. He scanned her face, seeing the terror in her eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Who was that?" "Nobody," Savannah lied. She pulled away from him, her heart racing so fast it hurt. I have to go. I have to go home." "Savannah, wait!" Colton tried to grab her hand. "I can't," Savannah snapped, panic rising in her chest, choking her. "Just leave me alone, Colton." She ran toward the parking lot, stumbling over the uneven ground. She left Colton and a confused Junie standing among the pumpkins. She couldn't be near them. If Wesley was here, if he was watching her, they were in danger just by standing next to her. Wesley destroyed things she loved. She couldn't let him destroy them too.
Later that night, a thunderstorm rolled over Ashford Creek, mirroring the chaos inside Savannah's apartment. Thunder shook the thin walls, rattling the windows in their frames. Savannah was frantically throwing clothes into a suitcase. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely zip it. She swept her toiletries into a bag, not caring that the shampoo bottle cracked. Get out now, drive to Florida or Maine, anywhere but here. He had found her. 3 years of silence, 3 years of rebuilding, and he had hunted her down. Wesley wasn't just an ex-fiancé, he was a sickness. He was the kind of man who believed ownership was the same thing as love. He wouldn't stop until he had broken her completely. A heavy knock pounded on her door. Savannah screamed, dropping a stack of shirts. She backed away until she hit the wall, grabbing a heavy brass lamp from the table as a weapon. "Go away," she yelled, her voice cracking. "I'm calling the police." "Savannah, it's me. Open the door." It wasn't Wesley's smooth voice. It was Colton's deep, worried roar. Savannah lowered the lamp, her chest heaving. She hesitated, then unlocked the deadbolt and threw the door open. Colton stood there, soaked again by the rain, but this time his face wasn't fearful like the night they met. It was angry. It was determined. "You don't just run off like that," he said, stepping inside and kicking the door shut against the wind. "Junie has been crying for hours thinking she did something wrong. She thinks you hate us. What is going on?" He looked around the room. He saw the open suitcase on the bed. He saw the half-packed boxes. He saw the fear radiating off her. "You're leaving?" he sounded, crushed. The anger faded, replaced by hurt. "I have to," Savannah said, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "You don't understand. He's here." Colton froze. He took a step closer. "Who is here?" "Wesley, my ex." Savannah paced the room, hugging herself tightly. "He's not just an ex, Colton. He's obsessed. He called me today at the patch. He's been watching me. I saw his car at the clinic. I endanger anyone I get close to." She stopped pacing and looked at him, pleading with him to understand. "I can't let him hurt you, or Junie. He will hurt you just to get to me." Colton didn't move. He didn't look scared. He looked at the wobbly kitchen table near the window, the one he had fixed for her a week ago with a wooden shim and a smile.
He looked at the drawing on her fridge that Junie had made. He walked over to her, closing the distance between them. He placed his large, warm hands on her shoulders. "Savannah, look at me." She looked up, trembling.
"I am not Wesley," Colton said, his voice low and steel hard. "And I don't scare easy. I have stared down grief. I have buried my wife. I have raised a daughter on my own. A bully in a black sedan doesn't impress me." "He's dangerous," she whispered. "You don't know him." "Let him try. But you are not running. You're done running. You have a life here. You have a job. You have us." Savannah blinked. "Us?" "Yeah, us." Colton wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Junie drew you into the family portrait, Savannah, in ink. You can't just erase that. You belong here, with us. Stay. Let me help you." "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why would you want this trouble?" "Because," Colton said softly, "I know what it looks like when someone is drowning, and I'm not going to stand on the shore and watch. We fight this together." For the first time in her life, Savannah didn't pull away. She leaned into his hand. She let herself be held. The walls she had built for 3 years didn't crumble all at once, but a door opened. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Colton stayed on her couch that night, keeping watch. Nothing happened. The black sedan didn't appear, but Savannah knew it was the calm before the storm. Wesley liked to play with his food before he ate it. 2 days later, the confrontation happened. Savannah was closing the clinic. She had agreed to let Colton pick her up, but he had texted that he was running 10 minutes late due to a traffic accident on the main bridge into town. She was alone. She locked the front door and turned to grab her purse from behind the reception desk. The clinic was dark, lit only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds. "Hello, darling." The voice came from the back of the room, from the boarding kennels. Savannah spun around, dropping her keys. Wesley was leaning against the doorframe of the exam room. He looked exactly the same as he did 3 years ago. He was wearing a suit that cost more than her car. He was handsome in a sharp, cold way. He was smiling that smile that never reached his eyes. "How did you get in?" Savannah whispered, backing up until her hips hit the reception desk. Her hand fumbled behind her for the landline phone, but she knocked the receiver off the hook. "Back door was unlocked. You really should be more careful," Wesley tutted, walking slowly toward her. His footsteps echoed on the tile floor. "I've missed you, Savannah. You've been a naughty girl, hiding from me like this." "We're done, Wesley. We were done 3 years ago when you left me." "I was teaching you a lesson," he said smoothly, stopping just inches from her. He smelled of expensive cologne and peppermint. It made her nauseous. "You were getting too independent. I had to show you how much you needed me. And look at you, working in a vet clinic in the middle of nowhere. It's pathetic. You're coming home." He reached out to touch her hair. Savannah flinched, but she remembered Colton's words. "You are done running." "Don't touch me," she said, her voice shaking but loud. Wesley's eyes narrowed. The mask of charm slipped, revealing the rage beneath. "Don't cause a scene, Savannah. You're coming with me. The car is outside. I have everything packed." He grabbed her wrist. His grip was painful, digging into her tendons. "Let go!" she screamed. "No one can hear you," Wesley sneered, pulling her toward him. "You belong to me." Crash! The front door glass shattered inwards as the lock was kicked in with terrifying force. Wesley spun around, startled. Colton stood in the doorway, framed by the broken glass. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need one. He looked like a storm that had finally made landfall. His eyes were dark, focused, and lethal. "Get your hands off her," Colton said. It wasn't a shout, it was a command that vibrated through the room. Wesley laughed nervously, though he loosened his grip on Savannah's wrist. "Who is this? The local hillbilly? This is a private conversation." Colton walked forward. He was 3 inches taller than Wesley and infinitely more solid. He had the build of a man who worked with wood and stone, not spreadsheets. He stepped right into Wesley's personal space. "I'm the man who's going to make sure you never walk again if you don't let go of her wrist in the next second." Wesley looked at Colton's eyes. He saw something there that terrified him. It wasn't just anger. It was the ferocity of a father, of a protector. It was the look of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Wesley dropped Savannah's hand as if it burned him. "This isn't over, Savannah," Wesley hissed, backing away, trying to regain his composure. "You'll regret this." Savannah rubbed her wrist where his fingers had left red marks. She looked at Colton, who was standing like a shield between her and her past. Then she looked at the wall behind the desk. Taped there was the drawing Junie had made, the stick figures, the cat, us. She stepped out from behind the desk. She moved past Colton. She stood directly in front of Wesley. "Yes," Savannah said clearly, "it is over." She pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. "I have already called the sheriff. He's 2 blocks away. You have about 30 seconds to get in your car and drive until you hit the ocean. If I ever see you again, if you ever call me, if you ever come near this town, I will bury you under so many restraining orders you won't be able to see the sun." Wesley looked at her, really looked at her, and saw that the broken girl he had left 3 years ago was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, a woman who was loved. He heard the distant wail of a siren approaching. Wesley's face twisted in a sneer, but the fear was evident in his eyes. Without another word, he turned and ran out the back door, disappearing into the night. Colton didn't chase him. He turned to Savannah immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle again, the rage vanishing the moment the threat was gone. Savannah let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 years. She threw her arms around Colton's neck, burying her face in his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, creating a safe harbor in the wreckage of the clinic. "I am now," she sobbed. "I really am now." 6 months later. The seasons had changed in Ashford Creek. The cold rain of autumn and the harsh frost of winter had given way to the soft, vibrant blooms of spring. The air smelled of honeysuckle and fresh earth. Savannah sat on the porch swing next to Colton. Junie was in the yard, chasing Duchess. The cat had fully recovered, though she ran with a slight hop that Junie insisted gave her character. "I was thinking," Savannah said, watching Junie laugh as she tried to put a flower crown on the cat. "I broke my rule." "Which rule?" Colton asked. He was sanding a piece of wood, but he stopped and looked at her. His arm rested comfortably on the back of the swing behind her shoulders. "Never trust a man who says, 'I promise.'" Colton turned to her fully. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers. His hands were rough, but his touch was the gentlest thing she had ever known. "Well, I haven't said it yet, so technically you're safe." "Say it," she whispered. "I promise," Colton said, looking deep into her eyes with unwavering sincerity. "I promise to never leave you wondering. I promise to protect you, and I promise that even when things get hard, I'm not going anywhere. We are a team, Savannah. Always." Savannah smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "I believe you." Savannah and Colton were married the following autumn. They didn't have a grand reception or 1,000 guests. They had a small ceremony under the pine trees. They had Junie as the flower girl, who threw the petals with aggressive enthusiasm. They had Duchess watching from a basket. And they had the truth. Walls keep you safe, but they also keep you lonely. It takes courage to let them down. It takes courage to trust again after you've been broken. But as Savannah learned, love isn't about finding someone you can live with. It's about finding the people you can't live without. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that second chances are real. Has love ever healed you from a difficult past? Tell us your story in the comments below. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to Soul Tales for more stories that heal the heart. Until next time.